Welcome to Can Do Teaching. This is Stacy Graff. I'm the principal at Canterbury Elementary School.
And I am Amy Fournier, the assistant principal at Canterbury Elementary School.
Our podcast is about can do teaching as we do it here at Canterbury Elementary School in Crystal Lake, Illinois. On it, you will hear experienced educators sharing their expertise, tips, and tricks when it comes to academic and social-emotional strategies to help meet the needs of elementary students in the world today.
Our goal is to create global citizens who are prepared to not only take on the challenges they face, but to add positivity and joy to the communities they live in. You should listen if you are ready to learn and laugh and become part of a community that extends far beyond the doors of Canterbury School. We're winding down to the last few weeks of school here, so our topic today on our podcast is that we can make it through a successful ending of this year here.
We've got a few experts from our staff who are joining us today. They'll be sharing tips and tricks to help you keep students engaged, how to reward students to keep them on track, and how to make sure that the end of the year is productive and fun for not just the students, but also the teacher. We have several experts here today to help us figure out how to make it from now through the end of the school year joyfully and successfully. I'm going to have them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Nikki Severin. I'm the Social Emotional Learning and Wellness Coordinator at Canterbury.
I'm Elizabeth Keber, social worker at Canterbury.
Allie Jansen, social worker at Canterbury.
Wonderful. Thank you, ladies, for joining us. Nikki, why don't you get us started by talking about, what are the goals that teachers have at this time of year for their classrooms, and what are some of the challenges that they face?
That's a great question. So the goal would be to maintain those expectations, incorporate activities that are of high interest for your students to kind of give the end of the year that fun push, and then also celebrating the growth of the students. One of the biggest challenges when I was teaching was understanding the amount of growth that my kiddos had throughout the year, because when you're with them from that moment to moment and every single day, those minuscule little changes are really not noticed by the teacher. And by the end of the year, man, are you just all done with the year? But when you have an opportunity to kind of step away from a little bit or use that self-reflection and think about where the kids were at the beginning of the year compared to now, those minuscule things become monumental changes. And that is absolutely huge. These kids have grown so much. This building has grown so much. The staff has grown so much. So that's something definitely to celebrate. So just continue to make sure that you're doing that with your kids and let them know how much they've grown, and they're just little humans that are going to be members of society, hopefully productive members of society. But yeah, you can also keep that focus on those high interest activities, making it fun, infusing SEL into game-like things or doing project-based things, which you can integrate social studies and language arts and science and all those things together. Challenges for this year, I'm going to focus on my favorite word, which is anxiety, or my favorite topic. We have both good and bad anxiety happening at the end of the year, both from teachers and students. So I know this year, starting with staff, there's been a lot of changes, but also we have staff who are also extremely excited for the year to end. So I would just recommend just kind of keeping your composure just a little bit for these kiddos to maintain that stability for them and not be overjoyed that you're all done seeing them in 19 days, because then we look at their anxiety too. They are also feeling those same things. They have the good and the bad. This is their stability, their everyday. This is where some of them come to get their meals. And social work services.
Yeah, and to just kind of jump in on that topic from a trauma lens, and it doesn't really matter what building that you're in. For a lot of our kids, this is their safe space. And so they're leaving their safe space, which can then become a little emotionally anxiety ridden, like Nikki mentioned, or they might be worried to not have that constant person who's available to help them throughout the day. Looking at it from access to resources, as Nikki started to mention there shortly, the access to food that we have in a school setting, the snacks, the lights on, make sure we have clean clothes. So these are things that kids are able to access in a school setting and might not be readily available for them at home. So as the adults in the school setting, there are some things that you could do to support them with that. Circles would be a great example of that. Sit around and talk to the kids about how they feel about going home, how they feel about the summer starting, how they feel about school ending, and just have an open dialogue with them, because a lot of the kids might be feeling different emotions about that starting to come to fruition for them.
And Amy, I think you had a good idea of something that would be good to send students off. It's a good engagement activity, but also good to have kids in the right mindset as they leave the building.
Sure, you might be familiar with the Find Someone Who activity that we do at the beginning of the year sometimes for kids to get to know each other. This is an activity where kids could find somebody to talk to and talk to them about what they remember about that person. So you could have kids pair up and talk about what their favorite memories of them were throughout the year, and why they will remember them, and have some good conversations about their memories through the year.
You could even take that to a memory book idea so that they'd have something to reflect on during the summer if they need something positive to connect with. And these are ideas that come from Kagan Strategies, Kagan. So if you're looking for them, they do have a good website with lots of resources.
Just to kind of piggyback off what Allie was talking about, and Elizabeth, that'd be awesome if you can help with this too. I was wondering, in regarding the resources that some kiddos may not have over the summer, what does that look like? Are teachers aware? Do you guys provide those or give resources to parents for summertime?
Yeah, so I think, with the circles, it's easy to tell which families do need support typically. And if that is the case, if we notice that there is a family that requires additional support over the summer, Allie and I can both provide resources to those families individually, in addition to meeting with the student individually and prepping them for what that could look like, and what summer activities could they do, especially if they are low income and don't have access to a lot of summer programs that cost a lot of money. So looking at how can we support that family the best that we can.
Are there some things that we could do here, like in the classroom, that teachers could do before the end of the year to kind of prepare kids for how they could more productively spend their time other than just on technology?
Yeah.
Do you have some ideas?
I do. I think because we have 4 weeks left of school, I think getting outside as much as possible and promoting the outdoor activity. I know even in our own groups, we're promoting that already. We're already asking them, what are you going to do over the summer? And so when they say video games, it's like, well, what else can you do? And so I think that doing that as a whole class and doing whole class lessons on here's easy activities you can do with your siblings that are safe, or practicing games that are safe and talking about that. The Park District offers a lot of free activities too.
Mm-hmm.
The library does. So talking about that with your classes is important.
And I think you mentioned before we started recording, even having some opportunities like maybe having an older class be buddies with a younger class and teach them some games that they could play independently outside of school, so that they have some ideas of things that they could do. And they're also, the older kids are getting some leadership opportunity, and the younger kids are having a role model there to look up to.
Yeah, the only thing that really goes along too with what Nikki said at the beginning, because she's saying honing in on the things that they have progressed with and all the things that they've grown through. So if we are highlighting all of those strengths, I think that's super important, and giving them the opportunity to teach a younger student the things that they have learned is important.
Another idea too to tap into for activities in the classroom to prepare the kids for summer would be something where you could create a bingo sheet with the kids, and they can come up with, as a group, different ideas to mark off on their bingo sheet for the summer. Another idea would be a calendar of activities for the month of June and July, and the kids can work together in groups to come up with different activities they can do at home so that they're not going back to just what they know, which right now is frequently video games or YouTube shorts or TikTok. It's going to provide them with different options, and hopefully you'll get more of a buy-in with them because they're involved in creating that.
I think too, like we could even do the end of May. Like they want to do the last 2 weeks in May, they can do a classroom calendar for those 2 weeks and use those strategies or those outdoor activities and then incorporate that into their June and July ones. Like what are the things that they liked doing here that they can do at home?
I like that idea because that really helps the students establish those habits and routines before they transition into the summer, so that then they're not trying to start it all on their own, that they've already practiced some of these activities and then they can transition it a little more easily into their independent summertime. We've talked a little bit about kids who are struggling with trauma in different situations, but let's talk about kids who maybe might be sad at the end of the year for different reasons. Maybe they're really attached to their teacher, or they're really connected with their friends, but they don't get to see them outside of school. How can we help support those students?
Well, this just brings back a memory. When I was in 7th grade, my favorite teacher of all time was Mr. Olson. He was like language arts teacher. He made connections with everybody, and it was like he just had such a unique take on learning, and people were so engaged. So when the end of the year came, he all wrote us these personalized notes, and it was just waterworks in the classroom. So I mean, that's an approach to take with your kids, to write them notes or to just be open. I would recommend just spending time with them and helping them process through and letting them know what's going on with you, whether you're going to be at the same school next year and you'll see each other, or they're going to a different school. Set them up for success. Keep things positive, but also real with them, and just be supportive with them, because it is hard. It was hard for me in 7th grade with a teacher who was my favorite, so I can't even imagine what that emotionality looks like for these kids, or feels like at such a young age, because I know that a lot of these kiddos have really, really strong connections with these amazing teachers here.
Absolutely.
And I think this is an opportunity to build up their self-esteem and their self-confidence, because you can really just highlight all the positive things about them. Like, we're at the end of the year. What have they made growth in? What are they really good at? What do they think they're good at? And building that self-esteem up as they are leaving here to help them get through that summer piece, but then also knowing that there is an adult that really does believe these things about them and sees these things in them.
I love that. One of the things I notice at the end of the year is that sometimes academics slow down a little bit, and the teachers and the students aren't quite as committed to, like, hey, we have a lot to do, let's keep moving. And so I see more downtime in the classroom. Do we have any ideas about what we could do with that?
Well, sure. Stacy referenced Spencer Kagan. He calls these sponge possibilities. And these are just some activities that you can have available in class to kind of fill those kind of down times during your class time with kids. Some ideas are art activities, puzzles and mazes, brainstorming words together related to one particular subject, kind of like a category sort of activity. Using kids' books of questions, like what would you do or what would you prefer? Having task cards, different types of games. Doing journals would be good. I was just thinking about what with Nikki, with your example too, like not having that person with you all summer, and maybe that you have this kid that comes up and tells you every day like an idea, maybe structure like a journal for them, either a drawing journal or a writing journal, where they could, you could start that in class here and then continue that in the summer, that they could share with you later when they come back next year even.
I love all those ideas. That's something I learned so early on in my teaching career is they call it the bag of tricks, to have that bag of tricks, because downtime is the worst time. And then that's when all the behaviors begin.
Yeah.
So I love all those examples. I think that's great.
Flat Stanley is another one too that you could do. You could make flat Stanleys and they could take pictures in the summer where they take their flat Stanley.
That's such
Oh,
a
that's a
good
great
idea.
idea.
Great
on
idea.
vacation.
I also think that at this time of the year, like we think we're rewarding kids by giving them downtime, but when we lose that structure and routine, a lot of times that does result in unexpected behaviors, and then that doesn't go well for kids. So keeping structures, keeping routines, making sure it's fun, but also knowing that at this time of year, you're going to have to kind of up the structures that you use. So if you're doing group work and you've been able to be kind of loosey-goosey with it and let the kids kind of each do their own thing, you might have to revert back to the beginning of the year where maybe you had roles and responsibilities and who's doing what piece, and you might have to revert to some of those things just to help keep kids focused and on track and productive all the way up to the last bell.
That's great advice. I think also just remembering that each day is new too, and the kids have the opportunity to reset each day. So we're not, perhaps holding on to some of those frustrating feelings that we have ending the day and carrying them over to the next day. We all get to reset for the next day.
Absolutely. The last thing I want to talk about today really is rewards, because just like at the beginning of the year, we flood our students with positive rewards. We should be doing that again at the end of the year. Does anybody want to add anything about that and what that could look like?
I think, especially now that the weather is getting nicer, I think reincorporating outside activities being the classroom reward and really getting the motivation from your class by giving them the opportunity to voice what do they want to earn, what are they working towards. I mean, they know how many days we have left. Most teachers have a countdown on their board so they can see it, but making it attainable so that way they aren't working towards something that they won't get since we have a minimal amount of days, but getting their buy-in by having them vote for like, what is the one thing that we're really working towards for the end of the year?
And if you want to do some individual reward things in your classroom, like we've seen some success on the building level of kids wanting to choose a song for the announcements or wanting to do the announcements. Maybe some of those things kind of trickle into your classroom, like a student gets to choose a song for the end of the day or during a work time, or a student gets to pick a special seat that they want to sit in, or a student wants to
Maybe even partner up with a younger or an older student during that lunch recess time or to read a book.
Yeah,
Something like
absolutely. So giving them different privileges and leadership opportunities that they can earn, so that those kinds of things keep them invested and working towards things in a positive way.
Yeah, and I really think a lot of the time we really focus as adults on like tangible objects because we think that that's what kids really want to or would want to work towards. But I think really in our building, we've seen a lot of success with those experiences being the reward. And we've seen them come back time and time again for lunch with the principal or lunch with the teacher or being a helper at the beginning or ending of the day. And that also just, again, builds that sense of belonging for them. And those tangible objects don't really do that for most kids.
So pulling this all back together, we had talked about the goal at the beginning was for us to have successful and productive and joyful classrooms from now through the end of the year. Hopefully our panel of experts gave you some ideas that you can take and implement right away in your classrooms. And we look forward to a successful end of the year. Again, thanks to all of our guests, and thanks for joining us for Can Do Teaching.